That'd be awesome. Oh, you have one on you. Hello, there we are. Perfect. I think we have 7 books left.
Oh my.
Or we did. I could say,
Is this one on?
oh yeah. Well, so for the, you want to do the handheld, Claire? Do you want to test that one?
Sure.
That's going to be for Q&A and stuff. You could sing Hark the Herald, because we don't care if it's not Christmas. We're fully inclusive here.
I will absolutely not be singing, but sounds like it works.
I love that, a 5-year-old singing Hark the Herald at February.
I'll do it like Charlie Brown.
This is the lowest I could get. There's not going to be any that are any shorter, are there? I was trying to get something kind of low for her. I mean, she may decide she just wants to use the table instead, which is totally fine. I want to, at some point, get her in here so she can see what it feels like. The stand? Oh, no, actually, that's what we wanted, was one with the arm. You know what I mean?
We've got one.
We've got a regular mic stand. Thank you so much.
We need a boom stand.
A boom stand. Thank you, though, Matt. Appreciate it. Right? We probably have one in this building somewhere.
Gotta be something.
Yeah, Tim would know.
Like, you almost can't get one of these without getting the other one in a set.
It's like twins.
Yeah.
Only, what do you call them? Fraternal twins?
Fraternal twins are awesome.
They're the awesomest. So yours are fraternal. Okay. We'll go see if she's ready. So April, so she's going to need to get in and out. Can we just scoot it out? Move it back.
This is 2 inches shorter, maybe.
Let's try it. It's prettier too.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let me go check on her and see. Oh. But I think this setup is probably as good as we're going to get for this. Thank you so much. Oh, stop. You know, April and I weren't just standing. This is kind of tall.
Yeah, let's move that.
Okay. I wanted you to have some water here to access easily. Is this, do you want it beside you or would you rather have it in front of you?
Oh, this is good. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Good. Does it help if it's not too close? Does it echo? Okay. Nope, I'm good. Ready.
Sure. I'm gonna introduce it with like 2 seconds and then ready to go. Well, you are here because you know you are in for a treat. You got to hear Dr. Delk this morning, so we're very excited about this. And I was thinking about how does one introduce Dr. Delk? So I decided I can turn that over to my friend Sarah Tevis Towns and let her do the initial introduction. But I do want to say, just as you're gathering, to remind you, if you haven't gotten a book, you can
found this old ebony magazine at the thrift store today.
And we'll want to turn the back screen on too, so Dr. Delk can watch it, please. If you haven't signed up already, we have three book groups, I think, opportunities to sign up. So they're on the table where you can purchase books. And as I understand it, we're down to a handful of books. So if you do want to get one, I guess you should grab one now. And then
I would just add, if you want to be in a book group and you can't meet one of those times, put your name on there anyway, and we'll figure out something.
perfect. How many are left, Paul? 6, okay. They're going fast.
Yay.
All right, are we ready? Okay, here we go.
I found this old ebony magazine at the thrift store today, and there's a UCC lady in the top 15 black women preachers in the U.S. How old is the magazine? 90s, I think. That was probably the Reverend Dr. Yvonne Delk. Wait, is that the same lady that did a talk recently on the Afro-Christian roots of the UCC? I am increasingly impressed with you, Karen. And yeah, Dr. Delk has been an influential voice for civil rights, women's rights, children, the poor, LGBTQ plus folks. She wasn't just a great preacher. While she was pastoring a church in Cincinnati, Ohio. Yes. While there, the mayor appointed her to be on a commission addressing the economic and racial inequities in the city. That same year, she began working for the national setting of the UCC, where she was the first black woman to serve in a national program staff role. She was also the first African-American woman ordained in the United Church of Christ in the 90s, in 1974. It's like before I was born. Yeah. So she grew up with Jim Crow laws. She did. Her family was subject to redlining, for example, which meant they couldn't live certain places. And she herself faced extreme racism and threats of violence. Jeez. As a young activist, she helped organize 103 sit-ins. Thanks to the efforts of her and other activists, Norfolk, Virginia's lunch counters were desegregated in 1960. I can't even, let alone women of color. How did she become a pastor? She was inspired by her grandmother, who was a minister in the United Holy Church. She was also grounded in her faith. She had great mentors. She was steadfast in her commitment to social justice, and she was persistent. And she's still around. She's in her 80s now, but she still gives talks and preaches and fights for social justice. That is so cool. It is.
Delk has been unwavering in her support for all who are oppressed. She is a prophet, a priest, and a person of deep integrity. She's kind and gracious, and she's fierce and strong. Her commitment to justice is steadfast. She knows where she comes from, and she's so generous to all of us who come after her. We are very grateful for all the work she's done to bring the Afro-Christian Convention, the Fifth Stream, to the front so it can claim its rightful place in the story of the United Church of Christ. Please join me in welcoming.
It is absolutely a delight and an honor to be in your presence. I've been thinking about this weekend for quite some time, and I have been thinking about it in light of February as well, which is a time to remember the journey, the stories, the insights, the understandings that have flowed out of a particular people in our time, African American people. Those who have had, and a story that has had such a binding impact on me and my life, and a story that I think has significance for the times in which we now live. Book that we've written, the story that is in that book, the journey that the mothers and fathers of the Fifth Stream have been on, and insights that I hope will have meaning for us. The times in which we now live, all things have meaning. And I have been praying that in this time of dialogue together, that God would give me a way of beginning to talk about this. And it's sort of how I started my chapter in this book, because the book really is a call to remember, a call to remember who we are and ways that will have binding authority for what we are called to do and to be in difficult times. A call to remember. And I begin it with the words from James Weldon Johnson. Over and over again, when the African American community gathered in the context of a narrative that would forever define us as less than, not worthy, inferior, knowing that the system that was designed to create that narrative would live from generation to generation to generation. And so to talk about it is not simply something that you talked about as if it was the past and gone, but a system was in place to devalue, demean, to create a definition of who you were that would forever define you as less than those who had created the system. That to be white in America was to live with power and privilege and the ability to make sense out of something that made no sense. The separation of people, and then to define that in a way where you blame the victim for your madness in the midst of it. And knowing that I would be growing up, my mother and father, and my sisters and brothers, 7 of us in the Delk household, in Norfolk, Virginia, in a system that was designed to say to us, you are less than. How to equip us mind, body, soul, and spirit to survive that system, to defy that system, and to enable us to be a part of another narrative that would speak life and hope over our bodies, minds, souls, and spirits. And so for all African Americans, sisters, families growing up. There were a couple of things that we were told early on or reminded of. And in the Delk household, it was always never forget who you are or whose you are. It doesn't matter, they would say, what they call you. It is what you answer to that really matters. And it does matter to hear the negative words, to feel the negative sting in your heart, mind, and soul, and to know how long that system and way. Last weekend, a group of us went to see To Kill a Mockingbird. And we were there in the midst of it, and there was a sign outside of it that basically says some of the language may feel in some way very distressing to you. But we just want to put on notice that that will be there. To Kill a Mockingbird, how to be human in a system designed for inhumanity. The question, who or what defines who we are? And ways that will help us to live out a different narrative. The book is about a people and a journey and a way of living a different narrative in a system that continues to flow with the rhetoric and with the affirmations that would say you can live by power and privilege and domination and control, or you can figure out a different way to live one's life. So yesterday in Clara's service, when we did the narrative and when we did that chant, I thought it was a haunting chant to begin with. And it asked a basic question: why in the world have you come to earth? Do you even remember? Why have you come to earth? Do you remember? Why have you taken birth? Why have you come? Do you remember? It's about a way of existence. And James Weldon Johnson, in the book, or in the hymn that has become a call for us to remember, Lift Every Voice and Sing, reminds us, you've got to remember that there is a way of living and existing other than the one you will be a part of. And it says, lest our hearts get so drunk with the wine of the world that you forget. Lest our hearts, minds, and soul get so caught up in the madness of the world that you forget who you are. You will forever be lost. But the way to hold on and the way to travel in the midst of the journey that you are on is to be rooted in something that has a greater power over your mind, over your body, over your spirit, than the negative realities in which you find yourself. So when my mother and father would say to me, never forget who you are. Never allow your spirit to be defined by the realities that will exist in Norfolk, Virginia, that had already decided from the time I was born that I would live in a separate existence from the white community. Racial divide, separation of the races, based on the fact that some are more worthy than others. And unless you choose not to be a part of that narrative, you allow yourself to become that narrative and to function. And the hard thing is, the narrative was in the church. The narrative was flowing in our places of hope. How in the world could the Afro-Christian Convention, this story, flowing out of enslavement, the roots to the Afro-Christian Convention is deeply connected to the Christian part of our heritage. When we take and study the lifeline of the United Church of Christ, we're very careful in understanding the congregational stream that makes up the United Church of Christ, the Christian stream that flows, the evangelical stream, and the Reformed. And in 1957, it was a tremendous moment in ecumenicity when 4 streams that had been separate and divided decided to flow. Although 2 of them had already joined in the 30s, the Congregational and the Christian, their merger went way back in the 30s, evangelical and Reformed. But in their hearts and minds, there was always this flow for unity, for bringing together that which had been divided, that bringing the church that was divided together, bringing people together that had been divided. And so in 1957, when this new moment was launched with great strain and stress on everybody, I'm sure, some deciding not to become a part of it, but those who did had 2 lenses. They wanted to heal the brokenness in the church by bringing faith together, to witness together on a journey. And they wanted to do it in behalf of uniting humankind. So the symbol was always that they all might be one. They all might be one. Uniting of faith and uniting of humankind. However, there was a serious flaw in even those who had a vision of unity, because at the very time of that existence, African Americans who had a connection to the United Church of Christ also flowed in. But the way they flowed in was totally different than the way in which the churches of the Congregational white Christian churches flowed in. At the time of the merger, this story was in play. This story has been in play since the days that we moved from the motherland of Africa, flowed through the Middle Atlantic, ended up in a system of enslavement envisioned by those who believed in the Bible and Christianity, a system of enslavement, which saw us as objects, not subjects, in the flow. And in the South, especially in the region of North Carolina and Virginia area, plantations existed. The mothers and fathers of this story, who had flowed from the motherland of Africa and found themselves in a system of enslavement, had to figure out how they would survive. In the storyline that flows, they drew strength from believing that there was a God that they had encountered in Africa, a world view that they were a part of and had been a part of in Africa, and a life system of how one lives that they had encountered in Africa. The taproot that enabled them to survive was an affirmation that God was a God that had declared all life as sacred, all life as interdependent and interconnected life force that flows together, not separate and apart from one another. They had a worldview of interconnectedness and spirit the air they breathed. God was in the wind and the trees. God was in the water. The stories that they told to one another was to gain respect for the lifeline of the Spirit of God that exists in everything, every place around you. They lived a life in relationship. Stories about even when the hunter would have to chop down the tree to build a home in which to live, that those who had to chop the tree would ask for forgiveness for disturbing the spirit of the tree, because they had taken something of the life force of the tree, even though they knew that that meant they could have shelter. So their ability to have shelter was related to the life force of the tree. Everything was in relationship. I remember how I liked watching Roots in the early days when I would see the mothers and fathers holding the baby high in the sky and say, "Behold, there is something greater." It's a life force that declares all life is sacred and all life is to be honored and respected. No one is to have dominion and power and control of life. It's a worldview that's different. The mothers and fathers of the story come from a worldview of wholeness, a worldview in which all life connects and is interconnected. And even when they faced being taken from their homeland and being placed in a place of enslavement, which demeaned, devalued, and destroyed spirit, wholeness, for the sake of power and dominion, they held on to the vision of the homeland. So when James Weldon Johnson wrote, "In the time that we exist, it's important for you to be true to something that can keep your mind, your body, your spirit anchored. And that's your homeland. Be true to your homeland, in the worldview. And to be true to God. Be true to your native land. Always. And so even when they were on the plantation, they remembered who they were, connected to a God who had declared all life as sacred. And it was there that they were introduced to the Christian, the mothers and fathers of this book, the Christian faith. It was the early Christian movement that the masters decided could flow through the plantation and to be able to preach to those who were in enslavement, the masters. And the masters probably decided that not because they felt that they cared about whether these mothers and fathers were empowered by that, but for them it was a source of control to keep them committed to their roles as objects of those plantations, to keep them enslaved in their mind. So they allowed religion to be contaminated with power and control and to flow. But those who received it received the word that was spoken from a worldview that had happened long ago in the motherland. And so they drew strength from a contaminated version of religion that was flowing in a place of enslavement. How in the world could the masters who were Christians hold them in slavery? So they disembodied from that and reconnected their bodies, minds, and spirits to the wholeness. Harbors. They found places where they could breathe life in the midst of the most inhumane situations. In plantations, they found hush harbors and reminded, you are not a slave. You are the sons and daughters of God. In hush harbors, they kept the story alive. In hush harbors, they found a way to plan their escape, to get away from the horror of that moment. But they had a taproot that flowed. So the stream that is flowing from this book directly into this space is a stream that is connected to a worldview of life in relationship, of life being sacred and honored, of life being interdependent, where we are in relationship with each other, not in power and dominion and supremacy over the other, but in relationship to one another. That vision of wholeness, they appropriated to the world view they were hearing, to the words they were hearing. So even when those early Christian evangelists and the Great Awakening